All right. Good morning and welcome to the Employability Skills Series, where we explore the top skills employers are looking for in candidates. Each week, we will cover a different topic with thoughts and insights from a variety of professionals in different industries. I am your host, Megan Morrow, Senior Associate of Experiential Learning and Employer Relations, and today I have Erin Miskowski, Executive Director of Career Services, with me as my guest to discuss leadership and leading by example. Dr. Erin Miskowski joined Florida Southern College as the Executive Director of Career Services just over a year ago. In her role here, Erin oversees the vision and direction of the team in the Career Services office with the primary goal of helping our Florida Southern students get into graduate school and into good jobs upon their graduation. Prior to Florida Southern, Erin was the director of the Pre-Health and Pre-Law Advising Office at the University of Central Florida for 9 years. She's also held a variety of other roles in career services and advising within higher education, including the Career Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Outside of her role at Florida Southern College, some other roles she holds in the higher education community include being the immediate past president of the Southeastern Association of Advisors for the Health Professions and the secretary on the executive committee and national board of directors of the National Association of Advisors for the pre-health profession. So that is a mouthful. So thank you, Erin, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and apologies for the lengthy introduction.
No, that's a lot of great accomplishments. You should be very proud. So I know that I just read your introduction, but would you tell us just a little bit more about yourself and what you do here at Florida Southern and why this topic is something of interest to you?
Absolutely. Doing these types of talks really makes me reflect on the leadership experiences that I've had over the years. And it's actually more than I thought when I put it together. I'm someone that just kind of rolls with it. I say yes, and then I figure it out later. So when people ask me to do things that excite me, I'm always like, ooh, that could be a lot of work, but yeah, I'll do it. And then we'll just kind of see how it goes, and then you make it fit. But leadership wise, as you mentioned, I've led teams at university or colleges for about the last 10 years or so. And not huge teams, but typically between like 6 and 10 people, which is, a nice medium-sized team. I have state level leadership in our Florida Association of Advisors for the Health Professions. I'm one of the 2 co-leads of our state association. I have Southeast regional leadership, as I just finished up as the president of our Southeast region for pre-health advising. There's about 500 members of that. And it's interesting because with that, there's a lot of virtual leadership aspects because we have people on committees and on our board from all over the Southeast region, but then we come together for a conference once a year, and there's a lot of in-person leadership as well. And then at the national level, I'm on the executive committee of our board of directors, so it's in the top 5 nationally of about 1,500 members of our National Association of Advisors for Health Professions. And as you know, Professor Morrow, I also concluded this summer as the co-chair of our national conference. So that was a heavy lift as well. So a wide variety of kind of college, higher ed, statewide, regional, national leadership roles. And I'm here at Florida Southern leading our career services team right now, which is just a ton of fun. And as you said, I got here just over a year ago. So now I feel like I really have my hands wrapped around what we do in the direction that we want to go.
That's awesome. Well, as a member of the career services team, I'm so grateful that you are here and that you are leading us, because it has been it's been a journey, but it's been a lot of fun. I love our team. I'm always talking about our team in my classes and even outside, and just the leadership that that you provide us. And I think that that's huge. And that's why when this topic came up, I thought this was a great opportunity to bring you on. I know you love to usually do communication, but couldn't do it this time. So this was a great, I think, another one for you because of just what you have done for us as a team here at Florida Southern. So I wanted to kind of dive into, you gave me a little visual here. So I'm going to stop sharing the QR code for the students. I'll put it back up in a little bit. But here's a slide that we have on leadership. So I'm just gonna kind of like turn the reins over to you, Erin, and like if you want to kind of go through some of this and we'll just chat on the topics that you hit on.
Sure. Let's see. On my side, it looked like it. There we go. Now we're on the slide.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So as I think about leadership, you got to put a little pop culture reference in here. And so I had to lean into the Ted Lasso a little bit. If any of you all has seen that show, he's actually a American football coach who then got tapped to be the coach of an international soccer team. And those are not the same sports, but his leadership skills kind of shine through as he embarked on this really interesting journey to coach a team in a sport that he really knows nothing about. So I had to put 13 leadership lessons from Ted Lasso in there as a little bit of fun. A few of those, and I won't read them all, but a few of them that stood out to me is number 8, everyone differs from everyone else. When you're a leader, you've really got to recognize that not all your team members are the same. But you need to kind of pour into each of them to help elevate them and make them feel invested and give them the time and energy that they need to help them do the job that they need to do for the team. And with some people, that takes a little bit more time and energy than it does others. Again, everyone's built differently. As Professor Morrow and I can attest, we're pretty different. She's very dynamic. She loves teaching and being in front of students, and that's something that I'll do, but I don't love it as much as she does. So
I do love it.
I think
For sure.
having, diverse people on your team and diversity being very broadly defined is really, really important. And as a leader, recognizing that diversity of strengths and skill sets and demographics and who a person is super important. And being able to, like I said, to pour into that to elevate them appropriately. Another one that I really like is number 10. As a leader, vulnerability is a strength. It's not a weakness. Professor Morrow can share that there's been times, again, I've been here just over a year, where I'm like, I didn't do that well. And it's sometimes a little nerve-wracking to be vulnerable to your team, but I think they empathize with that. And if you have a good team around you, they're going to help lift you up and help you think about how can we do this better next time. So I think it's okay to be vulnerable. And that kind of goes into, I'm jumping on lists here a little bit, but on the Erin's leadership lessons side, that very first bullet of collaborative leadership. I'm definitely a very team-based person. And I want to talk about things as a group so that as a leader, we're kind of aligned in the direction that we need to go as a team. So that it doesn't all fall on my shoulders if it doesn't work out. So that's
I'd
another
like
way.
to make a comment on that too.
Yeah.
Coming back to the vulnerability as a strength and, saying, hey, that didn't quite work. I think that, and that also goes with somewhere else. Oh, back over to your side where it says transparency. I mean, that's huge. I mean, somebody who's on your team, I can respect that so much more from a leader who's willing to say, hey, I didn't do this right, or I messed up, or taking some of that responsibility. And I can tell from personal experience where I've had, can't even call them leaders. They were straight up managers. They were straight up just somebody who was in a position above me, definitely not a leader, where, it's like that that probably Far Side cartoon, that political cartoon where it's like, you've got managers sitting on top of the big load and the workers are down, they're pulling the load, and he's kind of like, shouting the orders, whereas like a leader is actually down with the workers pulling the load together. And being able to say, like, this is all on us together to do this, like you said, whether it's successful or failure, we share that as a team. But that comes definitely from leadership, because attitude reflects leadership. And if if I'm working for someone who's just up on high on their ivory tower, just barking orders down at me, but not with me trying to work towards that shared goal, it's like, my heart's not into it. I'm not going to give it my all, if I don't work for someone who I feel cares about me as an individual, or cares about the project, is more about like what they look like and the success of the team.
Absolutely. I love that, like you said, that political cartoon. I've seen that before. And I actually had a previous student bring it to my attention and said, the way that you lead reminds me of this. And this was years ago and I hadn't seen it before. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how I think about it,
Yeah,
is
that's a huge
as a
compliment.
leader, you need to jump in. You
Yeah.
need to be able to assist. Things happen with your team where sometimes people aren't there when you expect them to be there. And that's kind of my bottom bullet: importance of the team's health and family. Things come up on the team and you can't, as a leader, just depending on the day, you can't just let things drop. I mean, sometimes you can flex and pause. Sometimes you can't. You just got to jump in and you have to be able to do it. And to me, that's the type of leader I am, and the type of leader that I hope most people will be.
Yeah, and working for a leader like that, again, it makes me want to jump in and do more. When different things come down, and as you know, sometimes things come down that we're like, wow, this really isn't, part of our department, or is that really, but like it's been asked of us. And when it comes down from a leader who I know is not just saying like, well, you do it, I'm not doing that. And I've been in those situations too, where it's like, well, you do it, but why would I do that? And so it's just like, no, I don't want to. I can't. I cannot wrap my moral compass around, working for someone who is just like so hands off, that says, this is this is your problem, not mine. And so when, it's very inclusive, and it's very, where it is truly, it feels like we are important, not just the college, not just the optics or the outcomes, like the individual team members are super important. And I can say from personal experience that our team feels that way with your leadership.
Well, thank you. Absolutely. I mean, that being that leader who can be hands-on when possible. And admittedly, our team is very diverse in our responsibilities for the college. I can't do everything that everyone does. But we will work together to find a way to
Yeah.
make it work in those times that we need. Yeah, but being hands-on, being able to jump in, being inclusive, and my second to last bullet, just kindness. Being kind when things occur, using kindness in your interactions, not just with your team as a leader, but really with everyone around you. All of your multiple constituents that you will have as a leader is really important, because your reputation, the reputation of your team, um, as there's like another meme out there that's like, people won't always remember the content of what you said, but they remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
Um, and that's an important one too. So that kindness, making people feel included, um, just your interactions of being friendly is huge. And I know Florida Southern is kind of a medium size type of school, but whether it's a company or an organization or wherever you are, that reputation of the leader will trickle down to their team. So it's really important. And not just from an optics and a strategy standpoint, to just be that way.
Yeah.
Just be kind and be inclusive and smile at people and say hello. I think that's part of being a good leader as well.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. Um, do you have like a story, or a past experience that you could share with us, where maybe, you work for somebody who wasn't quite that leader, and how that maybe impacted your team?
Without getting myself in trouble? No,
Okay, maybe not. How about I'll spin it.
I probably can.
Tell me about a time where you had a really impactful leader that, positively impacted your team.
Yeah. Um, I think I think our leader right now in our division, and I'll say her name because we're all here. Her name is Dr. Lauren Albaum. She's our vice president of student life here at Florida Southern. She is a wonderful leader and a very unique leader. And what I mean by that is she's responsible for a wide variety of departments and divisions. She is what I would call a leader of leaders. And that's when you're kind of like moving up the chain pretty high. And she has the vision, right? She has the vision of where she wants us to go, but she doesn't move us too quickly. Like, I feel like she always has this like end goal, but she's like, we can't jump there because people won't kind of continue as a train moving down the tracks. So she has the vision of where she wants us to get, and kind of baby steps us to get there. and the goals. But at the same time, she's very engaged, not to the point of a micromanager, but as someone at her level, and I've reported to a lot of different vice presidents or assistant vice presidents or associate provosts, whatever in higher ed, they're very hands off. They typically would take someone at my level that's leading a team and just be like, okay, tell me what you're doing, keep me up to date, so that when they're in meetings, they kind of know a little bit about what's happening. But Dr. Albaum is a doer. And I have not seen that yet, but it's a really good thing. I think if you can work for someone that's like that, like she will say, what are your challenges? Well, let's work through those together. How can I help you accomplish that? And get in the weeds like no one I've seen before.
Mhm.
And I kind of joke with her. I'm like, at some point, you're not going to have the capacity to get into the weeds as much as you do on these things, but she's proven me wrong so far. So she's that wonderful balance of being able to be a leader to people at her level and those above her and keeping them in the loop, but also working downwards at a level I've never seen before to all of her departments and divisions that work for her. So I think that's a pretty phenomenal type of person who can do that and a great leader to work for.
That's a great example. Yeah, because you work a lot closer with her than I do, but it sounds like, just everybody's voice is heard. And I know that when I was going through my grad program, my degrees in industrial organizational and leadership psychology, which is just a mouthful. Um, but I really focus on transformational leadership. And it kind of sounds like that's what Lauren kind of embodies, like this, everybody's included, every voice is heard. And it's not just, the tasks, it's the value that the employees are bringing to, the organization to work towards the shared goals of whatever it is, the college, the initiatives, the outcomes or something like that, whatever we're doing for the students or other organizations that are maybe, selling products or anything like that. But when every voice is included. And then also there's like a safety component. And again, I kind of want to speak to your leadership on this as well. Like there's a safety component where I feel like I could come to you if I have an issue and I'm not going to get retaliated against, or it's going to stay between the two of us. There's some trust and there's that safety knowing that like, hey, I have this issue. I'm bringing it to you as my leader. Let's work through it together. And I can also say personally, like, you've never turned me away, just like, go figure that out, or I don't have time for that, or that's not an issue. It's always very, very welcoming, the good and the bad and the ugly. I mean, because that's just life. And so when you have a leader that, you can come to, where I know that I'm valued, I know that my opinion is valued, that the work that I'm doing is valued, and even the issues that I might be having are valued, so that we can work through that. That speaks a lot to your leadership as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And I love that you use the word trust. There are levels of trust a leader needs to have. They need to have that level of trust with the individual members of the team, the level of trust with the team itself as well. And it's something that I feel like anytime you go into a new position, you're kind of like, even as a leader, you're kind of testing that out. Like what I say to my team, is there a level of trust and confidentiality here? But similarly, wanting those team members to know that as a leader, you can be trusted. Because I mean, it's 2024. I've been a leader in higher education pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And I know some of our students here are just like, well, I don't even know before that time, but as someone who's done this a while, my leadership style has changed quite a bit as well. Well, not quite a bit, but a little bit. I've kind of always been the same person, but I mentioned it briefly, and it's that bottom bullet there, health and family. Um, Recognizing that the people that work on your team, sometimes we see them more than we see our families. We're together sometimes in the same office or the same setting, if it's an in-person environment or virtually. We spend a lot of time together, 8-9 hours a day sometimes.
Yeah.
And outside of that, though, is a very, very, very important components of who they are, and that's their health and that's their family. And being flexible and understanding that sometimes those things make their way into the 8-hour day and not making them feel bad about it. Because as a leader, you're going to need that same level of grace sometimes when it happens to you. And letting them know, sometimes these things are personal and they don't want everyone on the team to know about them, and respecting that level of confidence and confidentiality, and knowing, like you said, you can trust me with things. If you need it in those regards, and that how I'm gonna kind of view your bandwidth. Professor Morrow may remember, I think maybe 2 or 3 times in the last year, but definitely when I started, I asked what I call the load management question, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, and I asked this to each of my team members, thinking about your load, not just your workload, but your load as a human, because sometimes that health in that family, that it's all you, right?
Yeah.
What's your current bandwidth, or what's your load management? If 10 is the absolute highest you can handle, and 1 is like, I got a lot of space to do a lot of things, give me that number. And getting that from my team individually gives me that sense of, hey, this person's got some capacity to do a little more, but also being equitable.
Yeah.
Where this person, maybe their workload is pretty manageable, but they've got a family member that's really going through some things. That's not someone that I would really put more on in the moment. So that load management question and that bandwidth, that trust, it all kind of goes together as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you it's very valued because going back to what I was saying earlier, knowing that each one of us are individuals and we're valued and we're heard makes a huge difference. And these are great examples of good leadership. But let's just pivot just briefly. As our students are going out into the workforce, the professional workforce for the first time, whether it's an internship or whether it's a full-time employment, what kind of advice or how should a brand new employee kind of entry level, they're working their way up kind of thing, if they are experiencing some negative leadership or somebody that they feel like it's not really, they don't have a good strong sense of followership to that leader, how would somebody go about addressing that in the workplace?
The first thing I would say, and I think about me as a young professional, and your question kind of put me back in that space. Don't burn your bridges. Do not burn your bridges. As a young professional, I did have a position at a university where the director I worked for, just a little off in some ways. I don't think he was intentional. He was just kind of an oddball, and he was a little bit challenging to work for. And I remember I was out to lunch with a coworker in my office, and I was, we vent, people talk about things.
Yeah, of
We
course.
were venting, and I remember she said, like, I was young, so I was just like, I want to tell him this or tell him that. I'm not that type of person that would ever do it. But I was at the point where I'm like, maybe I start looking for other positions within the university. And she was like, just be careful not to burn your bridges with that current leader, right? Like maybe you don't sense a fit. Maybe you're not feeling as invested in this role that you thought you would. But whether it's a position internal to the company or organization, or even looking externally, that future employer is going to look for a reference, right? And they'll look especially at that most recent employer to say, how did this person perform? So don't burn your bridges. And then similarly, just stay engaged and suck it up. Do a good job. Continue giving it your all. Because you just never know, especially in small communities, people know each other, people will talk. Just give the best that you can give, even though it might not be the most positive environment. Now, of course, if there's something really negative going on, then you work with HR in that environment to report that. But otherwise, just do the best you can with the situation and don't burn that bridge, and stay engaged and try hard until maybe that time comes where you move on to something else.
Yeah, I like that. There are 2 things that popped into my head while you were sharing this was I had a conversation with my mentor who has been in a leadership role for a very, very long time himself. actually is the owner operator of his own consulting firm, which does international business. So he works with a wide variety of people, all cultures, all walks of life. He just throughout his professional career. And the two things that he always said to me was like, if you do have an issue, especially with your leadership, or maybe even someone on your team, but if you're going to your leader, go with a proposed solution. That is going to hold a lot of weight in that leader's eyes, because you're not just coming complaining, fix this, I mean, depending on what the issue could be, like say if I'm having an issue with one of our teammates, I would want to know that I could come to you, but also with a proposed solution. So I'm not just putting stuff onto your already overflowing plate to say, okay, now this is an emergency and this needs to be fixed now, but you just do it for me. The chances are, again, according to what my mentor was saying, like, and he's been in those positions too, it's like the chances are that, that's going to get put on the back burner because there's other things that, that you're working on. But if you come with a solution, like, here's what I want to do, and here's how I think this might help, then that is going to alleviate some of that additional pressure that you're asking that leader to take on. And, you might have a more prompt response to that. And then the other one was don't have false loyalty. Like students like Dr. Muskowski was just saying, don't burn bridges, never burn bridges. I mean, people know people talk, that reputation will follow you. You never know what's going to happen in the future. Don't burn your bridges. But don't have false loyalty either. So if you're in a position and you're doing the best that you can, and maybe it's bad leadership, or maybe it's just not a good fit, when it's time to move on, but move on appropriately. Whatever the company policies are, whether it's a 2-week or 4-week, if it's written notice or something like that, like make sure that you're following that to the T, because then therefore, I mean, then it's not personal, it's business. And when you have those references, or that you can put stuff on your resume, because if you burn those bridges, you're not going to want to like say, oh yeah, hey, I worked over here at Florida Southern for 5 years, but I totally burned my, leader. But yeah, I want a good reference from her. It's not going to work that way.
Nope.
So, yeah, when it's time to move on, but move on appropriately without burning those bridges. And always try to come with a proposed solution would be my best pieces of advice for students if they are struggling with anything when they go into that professional environment.
Bingo. I love the proposed solution as well. You're absolutely right. That is so helpful.
Yeah.
When those instances come up, and I use that same strategy with my leaders as well.
Awesome. Well, Erin, we are kind of wrapping up on our time here. I know that you had a whole lot of good stuff on here to talk about, and hopefully the students are taking this. I can also share this if anybody wanted this. This was a great slide, and this was a great talk. Again, I felt like you were the perfect person to have this talk with, so I do appreciate you giving us some of your time and your insights to our students.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here and talking about this topic that I'm pretty passionate about. Thank you.
Thank you again. And students, let me put this back up just in case you do need it. If you are needing to track your attendance, you can scan the QR code on the screen. And I also put the link in the chat pod if you're, say, on your phone and you can't scan. But if you want your attendance counted, please do either one of those. Again, thank you, Erin, and thank you everyone who joined us. Have a wonderful day, and we'll look forward to the next time. Bye, everyone.